I love the Parkland students. I would argue the problem, if there is one, is the response of adults who seem only able to hear the voices of a Parkland youth, but can't hear the voices of youth in Ferguson, can't hear the voices of youth in Miami, can't hear the voices of youth in Oakland and in St. Louis and in Chicago. So God, every person in this place, every family that has been impacted by violence, impacted, Lord God, by the loss of life, by the taking of life, we call for the peace of God to be at work today. I've known at least a dozen, maybe a couple dozen people who have died from gun violence in our communities. One funeral, a young person was killed, and I asked how many have been to more than one funeral. All the young people raised their hand. How many have been to more than 2 funerals? The young people raised their hand. I got to 5 funerals. The young people were still raising their hands. And so gun violence for us and for me is a everyday challenge. Jesus declares that blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. This idea that being a child of God must be in alignment with being a peacemaker should not be up for debate. The research always tells us there's less than half of 1% of our communities who are literally driving upwards of 60% of the violence. And so we go and we make personal contact with them. We help connect them with healing services, therapeutic services. We make sure that they have a consistent touch of love that is not perverted or that is not manipulative. And we speak to them about their pain, because we have found that often if you are a perpetrator of violent crime, you at some point in your life have been a victim of violent crime. Peace like no other. I believe the response of both Democrats and Republicans, progressives and conservatives, to urban gun violence is underwhelming at best. The response is usually a tough on crime response that is always about more police and jails and never about more public health responses. Of course, none of us want weapons of war in our neighborhoods, and so we support common sense gun laws that remove weapons of war out of our communities. And we also believe that those strategies alone will not impact the realities of our urban communities. Can you imagine how different it would have been if the young people in Ferguson and Baltimore were met not with tanks and tear gas, but met with press conferences and town halls and policy solutions? There's a common language that we find all across the country. When our ears are trained well, we can hear the grief in Parkland to sound the exact same as the grief that is in Ferguson. We have to train our ears to hear them equally and to hear them the same. And our youth, like Parkland and like Ferguson and Million Hoodies and Dream Defenders and etc., should all keep speaking up, because it is often their voice that really sounds the alarm.